Good morning, grade sevens. We are going to look at dealing with abuse in different contexts. And this is on page 9 and 10 in your workbooks. Now remember, I'm going to show you on the slides the different words that you have to fill in. This is so that you can stay focused in class, but when you are working from home, that you know exactly which words to write in where. Okay, let's go. This module looks at the damaging effects that abuse has on a person's self-esteem. Remember in term 1 when we spoke about self-esteem, it is a very important aspect of a person to feel good about him or herself. Okay, so abuse affects every aspect of a person's life and should never be tolerated. Tolerated means that you should accept it as part of life. Abuse should always be reported, regardless of who the abuser is. This is sometimes a very difficult thing, especially if it's a family member, person that you love that is doing the abuse. Nobody deserves to be abused in any way. Now we need to make very sure that you know exactly what abuse is. Right. The next heading says, what is abuse? So abuse is verbal, physical, sexual, or emotional maltreatment of another person. Now, maltreatment is a big word. It is behavior that is cruel or unkind towards people or animals, especially by neglecting their well-being. Very important word to remember. If you neglect somebody, it means you are not looking after them. Okay, so now we're looking at different types of abuse. What is physical abuse? Physical abuse is the easiest to recognize, as anyone being abused physically has marks and bruises. Where? On their bodies. It is deliberately hurting someone physically on a regular basis. Guys, deliberately on a regular basis. Do not confuse it with just playing rough. It can include any of the following, and that is hitting, kicking, biting, or burning. That sounds really rough. Okay, we're on page 10 now. That says, what is sexual abuse? Sexual abuse is any type of inappropriate physical contact, which includes your private parts. It can be committed by an adult or your peer. This is very important to know. Sexual abuse can happen between friends or people from the same age. Do not think that it only happens between adults and children. The next one says, what is emotional abuse? It is what happens when yelling and anger go too far. Very important to remember. Anger goes too far. I know that many times people get angry and they react, especially if there's been a disagreement or a fight, but this is not the same thing. When people constantly, again, very important word, constantly, that means all the time, okay, criticize or humiliate one another. And that's very harmful to your self-esteem. So the dissing that people do when they talk to each other in a rude way, this can be emotional abuse if it happens constantly. Okay, so what is neglect? Neglect is when an adult chooses to neglect the basic needs of a child. So what's your basic needs? Basic needs. Guys, we're thinking of Maslow's hierarchy. It's the bottom layer. Okay, that is your food, your housing, having clothes, medical care, or even emotional support. So the last heading says, what factors can or could be reasons why someone may lose control and hurt someone else? Because we need to know what pushes their buttons. Growing up in an abusive family can cause a bad cycle of abuse. So it happens all the time. The dad abuses the son. It happens then that the son might abuse his son. That's a cycle of abuse. It's where family members think that it's acceptable to abuse another person, and then it runs on to the next and the next generation. People who cannot control their anger or deal with stressful situations can be abusive. This is very important. If you have stressful situations in your life, you need to know how to control your anger. Drinking too much alcohol or taking drugs can make it very difficult for some people to control their actions. Remember, the moment that you take drugs or alcohol, it inhibits you, makes you stop thinking of other people. Okay, so certain type of personality disorders or even mental illnesses might interfere with your ability to relate to other people in a healthy way. So those can be reasons why people lose control. But fortunately, people who abuse can get help and learn to take their responsibilities for their actions and learn to change their behavior. Guys, abuse is a choice 99.9999% of the time. You choose to do things that hurt other people constantly. Okay, I hope you got that. We're now going to look at the activity of the case study.